What triggered my interest in music in the very beginning, I was in a small village in Haiti, in a hut. You know what I mean? When you from extreme poverty, you know, some of us have a soccer ball we can kick around all day to make you forget, you know, where you at. So me, I just used to sing. So I'd be a little boy in the village, 5 years old. Kole bowo, kole bowo, kote yo prale, kole bowo, kole bowo, kole bowo, you know, and just every time I sang, it just made me feel a certain way, you know. So my parents came and got me from Haiti, 10 years old, moved me to Brooklyn. So when I got to Brooklyn, Marlboro Projects, I would say the music changed, right? Because now I can't speak English. So it was a culture shock. So I learned how to rap as a defensive mechanism. You know what I mean? Because I was the oldest. So if something happened, you know, I'm gonna go get my brother. So, you know, you're always fighting, you know, my cousin got killed, crazy stuff happened in Brooklyn. So music, when I came to America, it became a tool of survival. Okay, so now what I want everybody to know is, like, we're 30 years in, right? So I'm 30 years in the business. So this is what I want you to look back now. So when you hear Hips Don't Lie, you thought I was just the guy singing it. When you saw me in the Whitney Houston video or with Carlos Santana, or where you was like, oh, this guy is such a good performer, but it's 30 years later. So when you're watching the Super Bowl and you hear Rihanna go, bump, bum, bum, bump, and that Khaled, you know, Super Bowl call me, I get a check, right? Because I own the publishing. So you have to understand, when the hype is over, it's about what you really own. So this is what I want to tell the youth. So at the end of the day, think about someone who could sit 30 years later with you that did Killing Me Softly. 1 time, 2 times. I have a story. I said, when we did Killing Me Softly, being that we didn't write it, I produced it, I made somebody $8 million. I was like, oh man, I'm in the wrong side of the business. I got to start writing the songs and owning the catalogs. So at the end of the day, what I want the youth to get out of this conversation is that, how long do you plan to stay? And how long do you plan to stay? It's about generational wealth. So you can't just look at, I'm going to sing songs. You got to look at, okay, I'm going to own catalogs. So at the time that I was doing the Fugees, the Carnival, I still was scoring films. I was a producer. So I'm a composer. So this is the secret. Like when you see Quincy Jones, Fela Kuti, composers in high school, jazz major, nobody could touch me. So I always tell people, your foundation have to be strong. You have to do what you love. Whether if you're doing music or you playing football. You see the best football players or the best musicians, or the best boxers, when you ask them what makes them good, they tell you they studied the greats that came before them. Africa, to me, is where my ancestors come from. So Africa is home. So at the end of the day, by the time I get to the Caribbean, right, my ancestors, they all get to the Caribbean, but they took them from their home. There's always a cry, Africa unite, right? There's always a cry. But what's amazing today is that Africa has came to embrace their brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, right? And then do you understand what this is? The union is blessed. People, let me tell y'all why the union is blessed. Because long before there was somebody before you and before them and before them and before them, and there was somebody that was on that boat. So the ancestors right now are smiling with joy because this is a long-awaited unification, not just in words, right, but in the idea of business, right, and the idea of saying, how do we set up trade? How do we in the Caribbean and Africa start to trade? Why is this exciting for me? Because I'm looking at it as an entrepreneur who every freaking 2 hours, 200,000 people Google me. So what am I gonna do with that, right? So that means that I'm gonna send a tweet out. And when they say, where you at? I'm gonna say, Google it, right? Because where I'm at right now is I'm at the future. And the future means when Africa and the powers of Africa decide that they're gonna invest in the Caribbean, I promise you, together, as a unit, we will have 500 Amazons. We will have 500 Netflix. We will have 500 Hulus. We will be owners of the IPs, right? We will not only, when you know, like I remember like hitting the Dow the other day in the stock market, like I'm looking at it, and so now when we put our forces together, right? Our trade policies, right? We can influence it more in Washington, right? And now we can set up digital trade to a point where it's amazing. Invest in the youth, right? Invest in the technology. So I'm also a consultant for Google AI, the music side, right? So what's amazing to me is where we're going in the future. I'm gonna say this over and over again. Invest in the youth, invest in the technology of training these kids in the Caribbean. And that's gonna be a big thing for us.